Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to talk about something today that addresses all of us. And for many of us, we don't even realize it's happening in our minds, but it's truly holding you back or challenging you from moving your life forward and having the things you want, things you deserve. We're talking about shadow work. And this is just a piece of what her center offers, just a fantastic center that supports mental health for all different types, even school districts, individuals, couples, and on and on. It's New Beginnings. It's located in Massachusetts, and she is our Diamond of the Decade. Sherri Ann Alexandrovich joins us once again. How are you doing today? I think I lost your audio.
Oh,
there we go. There we go. We got you back.
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing today?
Very well. Before we even get into this, how do you define this thing called, these two words, shadow work?
So when I think about shadow work, it is the parts of ourselves that either we have been told are not good, that we can't, that kind of like that dark side of ourselves where, you know, sometimes we can come across them when, you know, we're triggered by something, or there's a part of our personality that we don't think that is acceptable, or something that we get offended by that somebody would say to us. And so there's a great book, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. It's by Debbie Ford. So I read it a couple of decades ago, and I've also assigned it as some homework assignments for some of my clients that I've been working on. And it really just kind of goes into what is shadow work and why is it so important for us to kind of dig down deep and explore what are these parts of ourselves that we've either locked away in a cabinet or we don't want to talk about or we're ashamed of, when they really could be strengths when they're utilized in just the right way to move forward with.
You said a word that resonates with me because I've heard this word recently more often, and that's parts. And as I understand it, more and more looking into this, we have multiple parts to our personalities. I'm not talking about multiple personalities. I'm talking about different parts from the personality that you have. And that's where a lot of the shadows kind of lurk, if you will. Does that sound reasonable?
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that the assumption is that if those dark parts of ourselves, that we should just keep them closed up because we don't want to bring them forward. However, they are part of who we are. And if we don't go back and open that door and take a look at it and try to work through that particular personality trait, as you're talking about, you know, that part of us, then we're going to either continue to be ashamed of it. We're going to almost prevent ourselves from being the best version of who we can be. Because all parts of our personality can be used in a variety of different moments. So say we have this really strong personality that is, say, the fighter. And, you know, that's the part of our personality that's going to stand up for us and be able to kind of come forward when we're feeling like someone's taking advantage or when we're feeling like, you know, we need to advocate for ourselves. So I think the misconception is that we only want to bring forward the parts of ourselves that are positive or the parts of ourselves that other people have given us positive reinforcement for. However, there's multiple parts of ourselves of who we are that can be used in different stages of our life or in different scenarios of our life. And it's really just about figuring out when is this defender the appropriate time for this to come out, or when is it okay for the silly side of us to come out, or when is it okay for the serious side of us to come out, or the advocate side of us. And it's just about embracing all of who we are and acknowledging all the different parts of us. And if there's something about a particular part of us that we don't like, then that's a great area to kind of go and explore and look at and see, why is it that we feel like we should be ashamed of that part of ourselves? Or why is it that we feel like that part is something that we shouldn't take a look at because society either has told us that, that's not an okay thing for us. And so just really being able to embrace all pieces of us so that we can then move forward and be the best version of us.
Is or are these parts not coming to the forefront, or we're holding them back, or we're not using them to our best advantage because mainly of situations from our past, pretty much specifically from our childhood?
That is a large contributor for sure. So one of the things that Debbie Ford talks about in the beginning of her book is, being a child and, wanting your parents' acceptance. And so you start not telling the truth and you don't even really realize it's happening. You're 2, you're 3, you're 4, and you want your parents' acceptance. And so if you're in a situation where you're always in trouble, you're going to create this maladaptive strategy of not telling the truth because you don't want to be perceived as lying, or you don't want to be perceived as saying or doing something that you shouldn't have. So then you don't tell the truth, and then you get positive reinforcement for it. And then kind of that continues into our adult life. And then when you look around at people who really struggle with telling the truth, or who really struggle with accepting those parts of themselves, you have to kind of look a little bit further and say, well, where is that coming from? Where did they acquire this maladaptive strategy or this inability to truly, genuinely take a look inside and see all the different parts? What parts of them are functioning? What parts of them are not functioning? What parts do we want to move forward with?
Do you have a lot of aha moments when you work with people where they realize, oh, that's why I do what I do, or don't do that, which it's holding me back?
Right. Yes, all the time. And it's so amazing to experience as a therapist because it happens almost every session that I have. As your therapist, you're sitting here and you're listening and you want to help your client be able to get to that end, right? Because it can't be your epiphany. It can't be your aha moment. It's not going to resonate. Right. So one of the things that I'll just keep throwing out different scenarios or coming at things from different angles until something lands or resonates. And that's going to be that moment for them where they say, oh, wait a minute, that does make sense that I do it this way, or that does make sense that this would be the outcome. And that moment right there is like, you just want to be like, yes, that's that moment. Oh my goodness, it's just such an amazing experience. And then the places you can go with it, oh my goodness, it's endless. Once you can get somebody to just be open to looking at any part of themselves, the future is there just is no limit to how far that you can go. And we're always growing and changing and evolving. And, every stage of our life, regardless of what stage we're in, we're always going to go back and reprocess something differently. So something that you might have processed in your 20s, when you re-experience that at your 30s or at your 40s, you're going to see it just a little bit differently. And I think the older and wiser that we get, the more we can kind of reflect on things differently, or a different stage of our life that we're in, we see it from a very different perspective. And it's just such an amazing experience to be able to be part of that journey for somebody that just watching that aha moment is just, I love what I do, and I get really animated when I do.
Believe me. I've done and do the same thing. And somebody said to me recently, but you're not the same person. That's not the way that's not the person I met. I was a friend, and she just said, you're different. And I said, thank you. Yes, I am. And it's because of what we're talking about here, where not a big super surprise for me in terms of what was holding me back from the past, call it childhood. Not that I had a bad childhood, but we all have things in there that affect us as adults. So I wasn't super surprised, but once I really put more focus on them, it's almost as if the sun came out. Like, oh, wow. Feeling of freedom, confidence, lighter. peace, all of that once you deal with these situations. And it could be as small as, if you will, you walking by the kitchen and you hear something. Could be mom or dad. They're not even talking to you. You're four. You heard it. You internalized it. 40 years go by. It's holding you back. Whatever it was, whatever they said, it's holding you back from something. You might not even know it connects to that 5-second moment back then. It's as small as that, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think when we're children, our need for wanting our parental acceptance is so big that that's when we
that's a good point.
So that's where we kind of adopt all of these maladaptive strategies, because if we feel like our parents are going to be disappointed in us, or we have parents who are addicts or have mental health problems, we're always going to be walking around on eggshells because we're afraid to upset them, or they're going to yell at us, or if we don't do something the right way, they're going to be disappointed in us. And as children, as humans, we're not perfect. So when we're experiencing that, we almost like create this side of us that is going to be perceivably perfect, because we don't want other people to be disappointed in us. And then that just carries through into adulthood. And you look at all the anxious individuals that we have right now. And where does that come from?
1,000,000,000%. Let's go hypothetically deep here.
Okay.
Let's say you've got somebody, let's say it's a woman, and she got married to a man that reminds her of her father deep down inside. And they do say that, a lot of us connect with people who remind us of that person or a parent.
Right.
So now she's married to somebody deep down inside. There's a familiarity. It feels like her father in a couple of different ways. She did it. She married that person because there was some unresolved issues with her father. Now, when she tries to approach her partner in that way, as in terms of maybe the way she dealt with her father, maybe her father was abusive, whatever it might be, and she goes to push the buttons of her now spouse, and he's very chill, she gets triggered, and that's because that's her comfortable spot. I know I'm going a little deep here in terms of hypothetics, but that situation could really dictate how her marriage goes. And she, nor her husband, knows what's going on. It's just that she always wants to start something, and he's chill.
Yeah. So what happens when we grow up in a really chaotic environment? Chaos becomes our norm.
Yes.
So we're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. When we become adults, we continue on with that, right? So chaos is our norm. When things are calm and settled, that's when you have to take a step back and you're like, well, wait a minute, why am I feeling so anxious right now? Everything is great.
Right.
Or why do I feel like I'm always waiting for something else to happen, or the shoe to drop, or always searching for that negative outcome? Because that's what your brain has been accustomed to for so many decades, that chaos is your norm. And so those are great topics for therapy, because then you can work through them and be able to get to the other side where now peace is your norm, and not wanting the chaos becomes more prevalent for you than needing to have the chaos. And this is all stuff that happens subconsciously. We don't even realize that shift or why we're doing what we're doing.
Exactly.
It's ingrained in who we are. It's like, you stub your toe, you say a swear word. It's like an automatic conditioning, right? When someone pulls out in front of you, you honk your horn. You don't think about it, you just do it. It's an automatic response. Well, it's the same thing with chaos. When you grow up with chaos, you're going to gravitate more towards chaotic situations without even knowing that you're doing it. Or you're going to continue to perpetuate dysfunctional marriages, dysfunctional relationships, friendships, because you don't you don't know much difference. So it's really important to kind of take a step back and this all goes to our shadow work. So this is what we're looking at is what are those parts of ourselves that we're gravitating to that are not healthy for us? And why is that? Why are we gravitating towards that? And then how do we bring it full circle to be able to say, you know what? I don't like it when I respond this particular way. And so last week I made a sentence, a comment, and I had said, when our response is disproportionate to the event, that right in itself is a reason for us to take a step back and say, why did I respond that way? So the event was this big, your response was this big. So they're disproportionate. So whenever that happens, there's a reason that you're responding the way that you are. And it's because you've got something over here, something in your shadow, something on your dark side that is causing you to have that response. It doesn't belong with this particular event. So there's where you need to kind of go back and take a look and say, all right, why did I respond the way that I did? Why did I get triggered when somebody told me that I'm not being honest? Why do I get so defensive when somebody tries to give me feedback? So those are all the things that are really important for us to take a look at. I mean, think about all of the individuals in your life that you've ever come across where you tried to give them any sort of feedback or any sort of suggestion, and you're met with defensiveness, or you're met with, nope, that's not me, I'm not doing that, argumentativeness. That's because that's that part of themselves that they just haven't been ready to explore or look at. So they're like, no, I don't like people who are defensive. I don't like this. But they're not willing to look that's who they are on the inside. That's what their experience is, but they can't see that they're projecting it. And it's really difficult when you come across somebody like that, because we really all have to just take a step back and really look at, why are we responding this way? Why are we reacting this way?
Yep.
Why are we repeating patterns? Why are the same things happening over and over again? And how do we stop that? And it's really just taking a step back and saying, what is it about myself that I need to change? How can I be the best version of myself? How can I move forward and make different choices and be comfortable with the peace versus the chaos? And those are just, that's great foundation work.
Sure. And not easy to do. Not easy to do alone.
Mm-hmm.
And just what you identified, I do know somebody who always thinks that they're being blamed. They'll even say, oh, so it's my fault. Well, there's probably, and I don't want to say always, but quite often that's their response. That's coming from somewhere. Maybe their mother used to say certain things and this is being triggered. I know somebody else, you just to go back on your example, where I don't know their childhood. I feel it was, everything was good, but you never know what little pieces are hanging out there that they internalize as a kid. But this person has been through a number of traumatic events in the last, say, 5 years. And they have anxiety, always did, runs in the family. When things are quiet, they get anxious. When everything is just calm, everything's just to your point. We talk about shadow work. So I think I shared with you, I'm in a men's group. It's a leadership community service group, but we call it Mask Down, and we talk about what's going on.
Okay.
And we talk about the shadow work, and everything we're talking about here applies.
Yeah.
Last week, somebody who, is the shaman in the group, we nominate somebody for that, gave 12 questions. And they weren't super specific, but they made you think. And a lot of the questions were, what do you not want your partner to see? And things like that. Don't remember every single of the 12 questions. Yeah. I went through the questions, and they say it and I write them down in a journal, right? Next one. I looked at my responses, and 3 out of the 12, maybe 4, can't remember. They all centered around my father. Now, my father passed when I was in my early 20s. Didn't have the best relationship with him. My parents got divorced when I was very young. One of them, that was reasonable for me to say, yeah, of course. All right. That's going to correlate to that. The other responses did. And for me, that's that's interesting. you know? And it's one of those things where, somebody passed a long time ago and, that's over here in your mind, you think you've resolved it, but where that answer came up, connected to my father, I was like, whoa, look at that. And I was just writing the first thing that came to me. So for me, some shadows hanging out there. Got to work on those. Nothing major, but that was my eye opener. And again, just kind of basic questions. It's amazing how, it the curtains get peeled back just by the littlest things, right?
Right. And those questions are designed for that.
Yes.
So they're targeted, they're specifically researched and targeted to be able to, get you to think about things a little bit differently. And I love hearing that you're doing this shadow work. And I love that you're in a men's group. And I wish that we had more people that were willing and open to doing things like men's groups, not just for their own personal therapy, but for their own personal growth. To be able to kind of get past that stigma that, men shouldn't be in therapy or men shouldn't cry. And I think that we're moving more towards more openness in 2025, 2026 with all individuals, not just with men wanting to go into therapy. And I think there's less of a stigma with therapy. But I do think that there still is kind of some of that residual stuff that's hanging out in the background about, how men should act or should think or should.
Well, it's societal, isn't it? Big boys don't cry.
Right.
Here, man up. And so we hide.
And that's not working.
That's not working. And
it's not working.
To your point, Sherri Ann, we go on different tours. So we're with, you pick a group, you're with the same men. Some of them could, cross over from other groups. It could be 3 months, it could be 5 months that you're in the tour. Every single one I've been in, it's been 3 so far, been in the group a year.
Okay.
We define values and core. And one of those is mask down. You're always masked down out of like maybe 6. The group I was in before this one, we got to a point where me and another man out of 8, the way they facilitate that group was, all right, 15 minutes, we'll talk about tribe business. Then another 15 minutes. We said, we're not getting anything out of this. I said, let's stop and be honest with each other. Mask down. What's going on in your lives? What's happening? Let's talk about it right now. And that was like the door opened up and everybody was being real. And we, deal with a situation, one man maybe going through a divorce, whatever it might be, and walk him through it. But it almost as if you had hit him over the head, to say, be real, man. It's okay.
I am like an extremely transparent, open person as a therapist. So how I am talking to you is the same way that I would talk to family or friends or my clients. I'm kind of the same person in all elements. And I tend to be, pretty animated in my personality, and I get very, very excited. And so when I'm working with my clients in session, same thing. We don't go in with the fluff. We go in with, okay, what are we dealing with? How are we going to work on it? It's just that open, honest transparency, which is, but they have to feel like they're comfortable in that environment to be able to start opening up and doing that. But that's where you effectuate the most amount of change, is when you've got that genuineness and that ability to look down and say, what is really, truly, genuinely going on for us? Because we live in a society of a lot of self-deception where people create a reality for themselves that feels safe. And then that reality isn't real to other people around them, but to them, they've created this sense of reality because their shadows are so dark and so deep, they can't dig into them. So they create this place that's safe for them. But then everybody around them is like, well, wait a minute, but that's not true. That's not really what happens. And so then there's that conflict, right? So now we're not really evolving into the best version of ourselves until we can honestly take a look inside and say, what is it that I really genuinely need to work on? And this is not working. So this needs to be something different.
Yeah.
And so I do. I love the fact that you're doing this men's group. I wish there were more of them out there. I just think that we can all just be better humans. There isn't any one of us that doesn't have work to do or, that forward movement. It's just so important to just keep going forward and not get caught up on what happened yesterday or the mistakes of our past, because every day is a new beginning. Every day is just an opportunity to do something bigger. But it starts with ourselves. It starts with how we're looking inward. And that's hard to do sometimes.
You said something, we're out of time, but I just want to say, we're fooling ourselves. And I think in music, and there was a song by Styx, came out in the 70s, mid 70s, called Fooling Yourself. And part of it is don't be fooled by the radio or TV, insert social media for current times. We're being fooled. We're fooling ourselves into thinking that's the way life is supposed to be and such. New beginnings. WC.com?
Wellness Center.
Wellness Center.
NewBeginningsWC.com, correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Somebody wants to start a conversation, maybe work on the shadow or shadows. Just reach out to you. You're just fantastic. Yeah. And you are very transparent in what you do. And I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate you talking about your own work. I'm so interested in hearing when other people are just so open to change, and I just think it's great. Yeah,
we all have a story, and I like to think that our stories help and inspire others, and also make it okay. Yeah, shadow work, get on it. Life-changing. Sherri, thank you so much for being here today.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I'll see you next week.
You got it.
Bye-bye.
We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.